All right. Update on the 90 Grand Wagoneer. I've made probably like 50 videos. I can't decide which one to post because they're all related to this. I'm just going to post what I've done so far so everybody knows, instead of, throwing ideas out what it could possibly be when I've already, done it. So, long story short, Jeep for 2 years, on and off. Like when I picked up the J10, for example, I had a trailer behind the Jeep. It was like bogging, kicking, not running right. Like an hour and a half in, an hour in the drive, I pulled over at Advanced Auto Parts, was stuck there for about 4 or 5 hours, replacing everything I could think of. Nothing worked, and then suddenly, just out of the blue, it just started working again. Like not bucking or kicking. Picked up the Jeep, drove home, and thank God it didn't have any more issues. Flash forward, like I want to say 6 months or something like that. The Jeep started bucking, kicking, wouldn't even drive, even at low speeds. He was even pre-detonating, knocking. Dropped the gas tank, found like 2 cups of water in there. I don't know how water got in there to begin with. Maybe the country gas stations where I live, no idea. My other Jeeps have no issues, but regardless, after I got that water out, the vehicle was running fine again. Flash forward maybe a few more months. Again, heavy throttle or high speeds, 45, 50 miles an hour, where you got to maintain a decent amount of throttle. It bucks, kicks, vroom, 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 and it just will not run. I found out in a prior video that the fuel filter, which was brand new, only had like 200 miles on it, decided to deteriorate for some reason. The silicone seal inside fell apart. I made a video on that, and it threw a bunch of junk inside the carburetor. Thankfully, the carburetor, which I have rebuilt, has like a metal mesh on the seat where the needle and where the float and all that stuff is right here. Metal mesh there, and it blocked all of the silicone. Didn't actually have anything in the bowl. Maybe a few black specks here and there, but the silicone was stopped by that little mesh. So when I rebuilt the kit, the whole mesh was just clogged with huge chunks of silicone. A few little black pieces here and there, probably from the decades or whatever, but nothing, disconcerting, if that makes sense. My fuel lines are not rusty, so they don't need to be replaced. The vacuum lines, they're all brand new or new-ish. None of them have any cracks or any, pinholes or whatever. All of the manifold and ported vacuum that I'm not using, I have plugs. You can see that little blue plug right there. I plug all that stuff, make sure there's no vacuum leaks. It's been in this configuration for the last 7-8 years since I had it. As far as the way the vacuum lines are routed, I routed them like an older, more simpler style. The EGR has been dead since the day I bought the Jeep, so I just completely bypassed the EGR, so it's just sitting there, but no vacuum lines or anything are going to it. And the one, that goes to it right here on the end has been plugged. Not sure what else to do. Rebuilt the carburetor, like I said. I've cleaned all the jets inside the carburetor, all the little venturi, the holes and everything. I stuck little wires in it the second time I did it, which was today. Maybe there's some kind of debris in there that just spraying, carb cleaner inside the holes can't do or get or whatever. That didn't do anything today. So same exact thing. The other thing I noticed was when I first took the carburetor off, when I was just grabbing it, it was wiggling a little bit on the intake. It wasn't tight anymore. All 4 of the screws were kind of loose. So that might explain, why it's doing that, because maybe the carburetor's loose, creating a huge vacuum leak, and, that maybe that was the issue. I don't know. So after, of course, the rebuild, I put new gaskets on there, except This thing does not have a phenolic spacer, that little hard plastic spacer that the 360s from AMC would have. It had this thing on, which is just another one of those cardboard spacers. This was first, and I could tell somebody had rebuilt it at one point. I took the plastic pieces out of here. Somebody had rebuilt it at one point because they were missing the little spacer right here. So when the carburetor bolts on, it doesn't have like a gap and you break the arms by accident. So somebody has been, rebuilt it 10 plus years ago before I owned it, but it ran fine for, 10 years or whatever. But I did put this back on just for the heck of it with the new, half-inch spacer or gasket or whatever, right? Apparently that didn't work very well because this thing is pretty warped and bent and all that stuff. So I'm not using this anymore. What I'm using is one of these type of gaskets on top of the intake manifold directly, and then I have this spacer or gasket or whatever on top of that, and then the carburetor sits on that. I also added those little plastic washers right here and here, so everything is all lined up perfectly. Added some rubber grommets on top, so when I tighten it down, it doesn't like break the arms if I over tighten, if that makes sense. Drove the Jeep, and bam, within like 2 seconds of me stepping on the throttle full, if that makes sense, like when it downshifts to first gear or whatever, and then as soon as it boom, shifts to second gear, then it just goes vroom, 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 and it just like wants to die. So I don't know what that means. However, when I'm cruising at X amount of speed, it starts to do that until I let off the throttle and start to slow down a little bit. And then it'll cruise at low speeds, if that makes sense. So I checked the carburetor again, and of course the nuts were loose because I guess like the carburetor squished itself on that cardboard spacer thing. So I tightened them again and took another drive. Same thing, still goes blah, 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 and it won't stop. So I don't know what else to do. I took carb cleaner and I sprayed all around in this area and on the other side, and it seemed fine. Now, when I did spray in this section right here where the little altitude adjuster thingy is, I did notice the RPMs go down slightly. I could hear it with my ear, okay? So it seems like there's a vacuum leak in the back there. So I took gasoline, which is all I have left as far as like flammable objects, in this little squirt bottle right here, which I use, to get the carburetors running or whatever. And I sprayed a little bit of gasoline right on this little altitude adjuster thingy. And as soon as it hit the gaskets on there, the engine just like sputtered and almost died. So maybe there's a vacuum leak where these two components are that screw into each other. Even though I replaced the gasket, maybe they need to be double gasketed. I don't know. Maybe something is warped right there. And okay, but the other problem is if I spray gasoline down here where the carburetor and intake are, it does the same thing. It sputters, and I could kill it if I sprayed a little bit more gas. If I sprayed it or squirted it on this side of the carburetor, same exact thing. It'll sputter and like die if I squirt too much of it. So it seems like the entire circumference of the carburetor when I squirt gas like wants to die. So that tells me maybe there's a vacuum leak, a really bad vacuum leak under the carburetor, to the gasket that it's sitting on. If that's the case, maybe the carburetor has warped over X amount of years when somebody rebuilt it and forgot to put these little spacers right here. So maybe the carburetor has warped to the point where it doesn't fit on the gaskets properly anymore and form a seal. But why would it die all the way around the carburetor? Wouldn't it only have a few leaks here and there? I don't know. Another thing is when I hit the throttle when the engine is off and the accelerator pump is pumping, if I keep doing it over and over and over again, like I'm flooding the thing, I see gas leaking from the gaskets right here, and I also see gas leaking from the gaskets underneath the carburetor. So is there a really bad leak, or are these gaskets just really good at wicking gas? You know what I mean? Like sucking gas up. I don't know if there's a leak or if they're just good at sucking gas up. Somebody tell me if these paper gaskets like just wick fuel, and it kind of mimics a vacuum leak. You know what I mean? If you spray gas directly on them, like I've been doing. I don't know. Regardless, that's all I've tried, and it still does all this. It still bucks and kicks if I give it a decent amount of throttle. I cannot figure out why it's been doing this, and it's been doing this for a very long time now. It's getting really freaking irritating. And another thing I just tried, and I found out that's bad, is I put a vacuum line on the Vacuum Advance right here because I was curious if the Vacuum Advance was bad. And when I suck on it, I just get a constant stream of air. It doesn't stop. So that means the Vacuum Advance is bad. The diaphragm in there is bad. So the Vacuum Advance does not work. And there's also a vacuum leak because of that. Now, the way the Vacuum Advance works on this Jeep is it runs into this little coolant temperature sensor right here, and it has ported and manifold vacuum connected to this. And once the engine reaches a certain temperature, it switches from ported to manifold, or vice versa, if that makes sense. That's the way they did it on these newer style carbureted 360s. So anyway, so Vacuum Advance is bad. The diaphragm is bad. There's a vacuum leak right there. So tomorrow I'm just going to plug this line right here and see if that fixes it, as far as vacuum leaks go. I don't know. I don't know if a bad Vacuum Advance would cause issues as far as heavy or high throttle. I thought that was only for like low throttle when you're starting from a stop. You know what I mean? Regardless, I found an issue right there, but I still have no idea if gas is just wicking quickly in there, mimicking a vacuum leak, or if there actually is a horrible vacuum leak underneath the carburetor and where the altitude thing is. I don't know. Maybe the carburetor is just so warped it just can't seal anymore. I have no idea. So the next thing I'm going to try is I'm going to remove the 2100 on the J10, and I'm going to put it on this engine. And the only thing I have to do is I have to disconnect all these vacuum lines that are going to the intake for the charcoal canister and all that stuff, and just plug all the lines on the manifold. All I need is, well, actually, since the Vacuum Advance is bad, all I need is manifold and ported vacuum for the power valve down there. I guess I just need a vacuum for the power valve, and I can plug the rest of them. So, because the rest are just all emission stuff, to be honest, except for this right here. So that's what I'm going to try. And if it works then it's probably the 2150. Something seriously wrong with it. I don't know. If it still does it, I know it's a 13-minute long video, but what else do I do? The next thing I'm thinking is dropping the gas tank, checking for water, like I said. It has a new fuel filter. Again, I've repeated myself. I have an electric fuel pump around here somewhere. I will disconnect the fuel line at the metal line down there, and which goes to the fuel pump right over here. And I will run the electric pump up here somewhere directly to the carburetor, directly to the carburetor, or sorry, the back of the fuel filter right here to the carburetor. And if it works then I know the mechanical pump is bad. So that's one way to check, I guess. But other than swapping the carburetor, putting an electric fuel pump on there, checking the gas for water, what else could it be? Could it simply have just been the bad Vacuum Advance, causing a vacuum leak and not working at all? Or I don't know. I guess I'll find out tomorrow when I drive it with this Vacuum Advance disconnected. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Sorry for the 14-minute long video. Sorry for repeating myself. It's just I'm trying to tell everybody what I've done, and I have done everything I can think of. I don't know what else to do. The only thing I don't have, which I need to get, is a vacuum gauge, so I can actually check the manifold vacuum to see if there actually is a leak somewhere other than the Vacuum Advance. Other than that, I don't know what else to do. So any suggestions would be greatly appreciated. And again, I'm trying to repeat myself here. It has a new power valve. It has a new accelerator pump. They're not leaking. The gaskets are fine right there. I've adjusted the float as high as I can possibly get it without, causing problems. 7/16, 9/16, roughly around there as far as the height goes. I've even taken the top off the carburetor while the engine is running and then revved as hard as I could go without, like, going beyond 4,500 RPM. And I watched the fuel go down a little bit, but it constantly replenishes. So I really don't think it's the fuel pump. You know what I mean? However, this is not under load. This is, revving it when you're parked. When you're under load, it could be different and require more fuel and not enough is being delivered. I don't know. So I'm just telling you what I've done. Okay, I promise. See you guys later. Let me know, please.